recording now. Okay. Yes. We are back. Back in action, baby. And we are going to read more of the Rise of Kyoshi. The last we left off was, well, first of all, Kelsing died. Well, it was the last of all. Or I should start from the beginning. Gianze wanted to see if it was Kyoshi or Yoon that was the Avatar. So they went to a secluded place to find a spirit who could tell them. And as a result, I guess the spirit had some gripe with the Avatar or with Jianzu, either one. He told Jianzu that Kyoshi was the Avatar, and he tried to attack them, but Jianzu just let Yoon be a sacrifice. So Yoon is dead, my boy, and Kyoshi was trying to flee, and she fought Jianzu, but he had her, kind of captured. He said he was going to be training her. And then Kelsang came over there, and he tried to rescue Kyoshi, and he was killed by Jianzu. And then Kyoshi actually got into the Avatar state because she was just very traumatized, very sad, very angry. And then she escaped, left Jianzu on that island or whatever. She went back to the Avatar mansion, and she packed up her stuff, and she was going to go alone. But Rangi is going with her, and that's where we're at right now. All right. So let me just see how much I want to read today. I should figure this out beforehand, but I don't. And I don't know. I guess I'm just lazy. Okay. I think I might know where I want to leave off. Oh shit, yeah. Yeah, I think I know where I want to leave off, but we will see. From how much I read. Okay, so now we're off to this chapter is called The Decision. The Decision. The sunrise after the storm had no idea what Kyoshi had been through. It shined its warm hues of orange through the clouds, like a loud war of a friend insisting that everything would work out. The waves below flowed neatly under the steady breeze, making it appear that they were flying over the scaled skin of a giant fish. Fighting the weather throughout the night had blasted them, body and mind. Peng Peng's flight path was starting to ramble, but they were no longer in danger from wind and lightning. It was as good a time as any to address the other life-shattering pieces of news. It was good a time as any to address the other life-shattering piece of news. Ranky rubbed at the dark shadows under her eyes. "You're the Avatar," she said. She spread her fingers and stared at the back of her hands, checking whether she was intoxicated or dreaming. "After all of this, it's you. You really had no idea until now?" Kyoshi shook her head. "I don't know what went wrong with the search when we were younger, but from what Kelsey told me, it sounded like a complete mess. No one knew, not even... It was difficult to spit out his name. Not even Jiangsu. I've never heard of this happening before," Rangy said. She closed and opened her fists to make sure they were still working. "At least not in Fire Nation history. When the Fire Sages reveal this Avatar, it's a done deal." Kyoshi fought the urge to roll her eyes. Of course, in the Fire Nation, the caravans arrived on time. The identity of the most important person in the world was never in doubt. "And then there's a festival," Reggie said, lost in thought. According to tradition, there's a celebration bigger than Twin Sunday. We eat special foods like spiral-shaped noodles. The school is canceled. Do you know how rare it is for school to be canceled in the Fire Nation? Rangi, what does that have to do with anything? The firebender stretched her elbows behind her back. She made up her mind made up. My point is that there are set ways this is supposed to pan out, she said. If you're the Avatar, you need the trappings of the Avatar. We need to find masters who know what they're doing to recognize your legitimacy and give you the right guidance. Ranky vaulted over the saddle edge onto Peng Peng's neck and took up the reins. The bison dipped lower over the shimmering water. Up ahead, a small drag jutted from the surface, a finger of rock poking through the ocean sheet. It was too steep for ships to use it as a dock, but there were a few level surfaces near the top, covered in soft green moss. I'm going to drop you off here, where you can camp safely, Rangi said. There's a protocol in the event the compound came under attack, and I had to flee with the Avatar. Those bags were pre-packed. There's everything you need for a week in them. Once I return to the village and figure the situation out, I'll bring someone who can help. No! She couldn't go to another master, especially not a well-known one. Any earthbender in a position to aid her was more likely than not to be part of Jianzu's web. Looking back on her time at the house, she'd seen the evidence of his reach every day. The gifts, the ceremonious visits, the dictated letters were simply tokens that marked the flow of power and control in the Earth Kingdom. And for as long as she'd known, it all filtered up to Jianzu. Kyoshi scrambled over to Rangi and yanked the reins out of her hands. Peng Peng swerved to the side and roared in complaint. Stop that! Rangi shouted. Rangi, please! You'd only be sending me right back to his hands. Kyoshi nearly bit through her tongue as she remembered the horror Jianzu unleashed from deep within the mountain, and his complete callousness while he did so. Rangi couldn't have known the extent of her fear. Kyoshi was certain the man hadn't shown that side of himself to anyone but her and Yoon. Rangi fought with her for the reins. Let go! You're being ridiculous! Rangi, as your avatar, I command you! The firebender recoiled like she'd been struck by a whip. The order wasn't one of Yoon's jokes. It was an exploitation of Rangi's oath to protect and obey the Avatar. An attack on her honor. Rangi blew a long strand of black hair out of her face. It didn't go very far, the end of it sticking to her mouth. I suppose I have to get used to you saying that. There was an agonizing distance in her voice, and Kyoshi despised it. She didn't want a professional bodyguard obeying her orders. She wanted her, Rangi, who scolded her without hesitation and never backed down. They spent a long time in silence, listening to the breeze pick up. Yoon is gone, Rangi said. He's really gone. He's really gone. Her voice seemed thin, drawn out by the passing wind, like the notes of a flute. She sounded hollow inside. Kyoshi had no comfort to give her. Both of their lives had centered around duty. Kyoshi's for the sake of survival, Rangi's for pride and glory. But Yoon had managed to pierce both their shells. Their friend had been stolen, and as far as Kyoshi was concerned, there was a single path laid out before her that she could take in response, lit by the clean, bright fires of hatred. I'm not ready to confront Jianzu, Kyoshi said. I'm not nearly strong enough yet. I have to find bending masters who can teach me to fight and who aren't in his pocket. In fact, it was more than that. She needed teachers who were completely unknown to Jianzu. If he suspected she was after training, he'd look for her in schools around the four nations, and she'd have to conceal she was the Avatar. That news would spread so fast it would act as a beacon for Jianzu, allowing him to close in on her before she was prepared. She didn't have a good idea how she'd obtain instruction in all four elements without giving the game up, but she'd make it work somehow. The idea sounded ludicrous in her head. It was ludicrous, and yet Kyoshi knew she would walk off this cliff without hesitation. She would stick both hands into a dragon's mouth if it meant the slightest chance she could pay back Jianzu what she owed him. Rangi dragged her hand down her face. Fine, bending masters. Where do you want to look first? You're talking like you have a plan, so let's hear it. You're not coming with me, Kyoshi said. I have to do this alone. The firebender gave her a look of such utter contempt for that notion that it could have been grounds for an Agni Kai. Kyoshi was afraid this might happen. Rangi's powerful faith, her need to fulfill her duty, would spiral around with no spot to land on her but her. Yeah, Rangi's powerful faith, her need to fulfill her duty, would spiral around with no spot to land on but her. She had to stand strong. She'd lost so much already, and she wasn't going to risk her one remaining connection to this world on a fool's quest. You're not coming with me, Kyoshi repeated. As your avatar, I command you to stay behind. Rangi, I'm serious. Yeah. No. No only friend in the world. I need to do this alone. Yep. It is true, though. Alright. Yeah. As your avatar, I command you to stay behind. Rangi, I'm serious. She wanted to sound angry, but the effect was ruined by the overwhelming tide of relief she'd felt at Rangi's rejection of her command. A strictly professional servant of the Avatar couldn't disobey her, but a companion might. I have no idea how long this journey will take, Kyoshi said, and there are secrets about me that I haven't told you. Oh no. Kyoshi's keeping a secret from me? Uh, Rangi moaned, an octave lower than normal. I think I'll be okay with whatever your little revelation is, given the last thing you sprung on me was only the most important piece of information on the planet. The crag passed them. The crag passed them by, a silent onlooker that wanted no part of the conversation. The last marker of reason in an ocean of uncertainty. From this point onward, there was nothing but trouble ahead. But at least Kyoshi had her friend back. We'll need rest, or we'll lose effectiveness, Rangi declared, nestling herself under the corner of a tarp that had come loose. If you've got a destination in mind, then I'm taking the first sleep shift. You owe me that much. Rangi! Kyoshi tried one last time to growl in threat. Instead, the name came out like a dedication of thanks to the spirits for this fiery blessing of a girl. It was futile trying to mask how Kyoshi felt toward her. Where you go, I go. The firebender rolled to her side and yawned. Besides, there's only one bison. Rocks for brain. Besides, there's only one bison, rocks for brains. We can't split up now. We can't split up now. Despite how tired they were, Rangi only dozed fitfully, shivering though it was no longer cold. Watching her from a distance, Kyoshi had an answer. Kyoshi's beyond crushing. Oh yeah. Damn, that line was just like, that sounds like a blooming crush right there. And we appreciate it. Alright. Yeah, despite how tired they were, Rangi only dozed fitfully, shivering though it was no longer cold. Watching her from a distance, Kyoshi had an answer regarding the little snips of breath she'd listened to for so long in their shared tent on the iceberg. It was how Rangi cried in her sleep. Every so often, she would burrow her face into her shoulders to wipe her tears. With their eyes on each other, it was easy to be brave. Maybe that's the only way we get through this, Kyoshi thought. Just never look away. She stared at the water until the sun's reflection became too much, and then reached for her single bag of belongings. Digging around, she found the clay turtle. It was made of earth. It was tiny. She could use it for practice. Small, she thought as she cradled it with both hands. Precious, not precious. Precise, silent, small. She curled her lips in concentration. It was like crooking the tip of her pinky. Yeah, it was like crooking the tip of her pinky while wiggling her opposite ear. She needed a whole body effort to keep her focus sufficiently narrow. There was another reason why she didn't want to seek instruction from a famous bending master with a sterling reputation and wisdom to spare. Such a teacher would never let her kill Jianzu in cold blood. Her hunger to learn all four elements had nothing to do with becoming a fully realized avatar. Fire, air, and water were simply more weapons she could bring to bear on. Fire, air, and water were simply more weapons she could bring to bear on a single target. And she had to bring her earthbending up to speed too. Small, precise. The turtle floated upward, trembling in the air. It wasn't ready the way bent earth should be. More of a wobbling top. Yeah, it wasn't ready the way bent earth should be. More of a wobbling top on its last few spins, but she was bending it. The smallest piece of earth she'd ever managed to control. Of minor victory, this was only the beginning of her path. She would need much more practice to see Jianzu broken in pieces before her feet, to steal his word away from him the way he had stolen hers, to make him suffer as much as possible before she ended his miserable, worthless life. There was a sharp crack. The turtle fractured along innumerable fault lines. The smallest parts, the blunt little tail and squat legs, crumpled first. The head fell off and bounced over the edge of the saddle. She tried to close her grip around the rest of it and caught only dust. The powdered clay slipped between her fingers and was taken by the breeze. The powdered clay slipped between her fingers and was taken by the breeze. Her only keepsake of Kelsang flew away on the wind. And that is the end of that chapter. Alright, on to the next chapter. Adaptation. That's the next chapter. That's what it's called. Adaptation. Jianzu pushed open the doors of his house to find it static, silent, Jianzu opened the doors of his house to find it in static, silent chaos. The servants lined up in rows to the left and right, bowing as the master entered, forming a human aisle of deference for him to walk through. It was overly formal, a practice he dismissed long ago. He hadn't bothered to clean himself before entering, so he left a trail of dust and rubble in his wake. There was an ache in his chest as he passed the bashed-in door to his study, a testament to his airbender friend's great strength and personal conviction. He had no time to grieve for what had happened to Kelsang. He went straight to the Avatar's room and the staff quarters, followed the path of damage outside to the empty bison pen, and then back to his cowering servants in a loop. "Can someone tell me what happened here?" he said in what he thought was an admirably neutral, collected tone given the circumstances. Instead of answering, they shrank further into their shoulders, quaking. Whoever spoke up first was sure to take the blame. "They're afraid of me," he thought, "to the point they can't do their jobs properly." He cursed the fact that the girl had no official supervisor watching her, and pointed at his head cook, Moi. He'd seen the Avatar doing favors for the women in the kitchen. "Where is Kyoshi?" he said, snapping his fingers. Moi went crimson. I don't know. I'm so sorry, Master. None of us had ever seen her act that way before. She had a weapon. By the time we could find a guardsman, she was gone. Did any of the guests see her leave? Moi shook her head. Most of them left early to try and beat the storm, and the others were in their rooms in the far wing. He supposed it wasn't the middle-aged cook's fault that she was unable to stop a rampaging, axe-wielding teenager who could break a mountain whenever she remembered she had the ability. Giantu dismissed the staff without another word. Better to have them uncertain, fearing his next command. He drifted through the walls. He drifted through the halls of the house until he found himself in an aisle of the gallery, staring at some of his artwork, but not seeing it. That was where Hayran found him after she returned from an offshore meeting with the delegation from the Fire Navy. She frowned at his appearance. Ever the disciplinarian. Yeah, she frowned at his appearance. Ever the disciplinarian. You look like you were spat out by a badger mole, she said. Better to tear off this bandage quickly. He had told her the version of events she needed to hear. Kyoshi being the true Avatar, the disappearance of both Yoon and Kelsang, caused by a treacherous spirit, the Avatar holding a grudge against him for it. She slapped him across the face, which was about as good as a result as he could get. How can you stand there like that? She hissed, her bronze eyes darkening with fury. How can you just stand there? Jiantu worked his jaw, making sure it wasn't broken. Would you rather I sit? A less controlled person than Hayran would have been tempted to scream her disbelief to the skies, letting the secret out. You had the wrong Avatar? You introduced a boy to the world as its savior and then got him killed? You let the real Avatar run off to who knows where? Our oldest and closest friend is dead because of you? And, there are some lines that it'll be like they're saying it, but it's like inner dialogue. That was inner dialogue. I should mention that more. But I think maybe you can understand that it's inner dialogue. But yes, that was inner dialogue. He was grateful for Hayran's iron character. She thought those things at him instead of saying them. Okay, and then it explains it. Okay. Yeah, she thought those things at him instead of saying them, fuming strategically. How are you not going to lose face over this? She whispered. All of your credibility. What are you going to do? I don't know. He leaned against the gallery wall, as surprised at his own response as she was. Out of Karuk's companions, he had been the planner. Normally, Jianzu had every contingency, every fork in the road mapped out to its logical end. He found the change of pace rather liberating. Hayran couldn't believe he was drifting like this. She pulled her lips back over her teeth. We can minimize the damage if we get her back quickly, she said. She can't have gone far on her own. She's a maid, for crying out loud. I'll send Rangi to hunt her down. The two of them are friends. She'll know where Kyoshi would run to. Hayran found the nearest summoning rope and gave it a yank. The soft yellow cables ran through the house, held by eyelets across certain walls. The bells at the other ends let the staff know where help was needed. Given what his employees were busy of, given that his employees were busy avoiding him like the plague, it was a minute or two before someone answered. Rin or Lin or whatever. The girl was out of breath, and she limped slightly, like she'd stubbed her toe in her hurry to arrive. Rin, please fetch my daughter. Rin, please fetch my daughter. Hayran said kindly. Tell her it's very important. I'm so sorry, Rin shrieked. She was trying so hard not to mince her words in fright that she erred on the side of ear-spitting volume. Miss Ranky's disappeared. One of the stable hands said she saw her leave with Kyoshi last night. Rin, please leave my sight immediately, Hayran said with warmth of a different kind this time. The girl bowed and backed away, eyes lowered, her socked feet thumping a pattern down the hallway that was almost as fast and loud as her heartbeat. Jianzu waited until she vanished around the corner. I'm about to kill the next person I see. Oh my god, yeah. Yeah, Jianzu waited until she vanished around the corner. Before you hit me again, he said to Hayran, I believe whatever Ranky does is your fault, not mine. Her face contorted like she was living 1,000 lifetimes right then and there, and most of which she melted his eyeballs using his skull as a cauldron. This is a positive, Jianzu said. Your daughter will keep her safe until we find them. Until we find them? Hayran screamed in whisper. Let me say that again. Until we find them? Hayran screamed in a whisper. My daughter is an elite warrior trained in escape and evasion. We can already forget about an easy chase. She thrust in place, the waves of bad news buffeting her around, challenging her equilibrium. When she came to a stop, her face was lined with deep sorrow. Jianzu, Kelsing is dead, she said. Our friend is dead, and instead of mourning him, we're standing here, plotting how to maintain our grip on the Avatar. What has happened to us? What have we become? We've grown old and become responsible, is what, Jianzu said. Kelsing made the same promise to Karuk that we did. We can honor his memory, both of our memories, by continuing on our path. He found his usual energy coming back. His dalliance with helplessness finished. There had been too many futures to consider before. The individual degrees of catastrophe were overwhelming. But really, he only needed to focus on one solution. The piece that was critical to every scenario. We'll get the Avatar back, he said. Finding her ourselves would be ideal, obviously, but it'll be fine if she turns up on the doorstep of another sage to seek refuge. I'll find out and respond quick enough to smother the news from traveling further. He wasn't worried about the Avatar hiding in the other nations either. His personal networks extended further than the Earth Kingdom's diplomacy. If anything, his foreign contacts would inform him faster and with more discretion, hoping to avoid an international incident. And what if she falls in with one of the Hui's allies? Heiran asked. Jianzu grimaced at the mention of the grimaced at the mention of the Chamberlain's name. I suppose that's always a risk, but I'm fairly certain she wouldn't know who he is or which masters he's got his hooks into. I don't even know who sided with him yet. Yeah, I don't even know who's sided with him yet. Jianzu got off the wall. My reputation will certainly take an unavoidable hit once we have to reveal her identity to the world, but that won't matter in the end, he said. As long as the girl is back here when we do it, under my roof, following my orders, it will all work out. I have capital to burn within the Earth Kingdom. Time to put it to good use. Heiran grudgingly appreciated her friend's return to his usual self. It doesn't sound like the girl wants to be here. We'll worry about that later. Besides, she's still a child. She'll learn what's in her best interest. In her best interests. He dusted himself off, the first attempt he'd made to get rid of the filth of the mining town so far. The plan molded itself together in his head, like clay under the guidance of an invisible tool. I need you to write a letter for me. Heiran looked at him sideways. I know, he said. You're not my secretary, but there has to be a Fire Nation stamp on this message. Fine. Who's it to? Professor Shah, head of zoology at Ba Sing Se University. Tell him you're interested in borrowing some specimens he brought back from his latest expedition. You want to display them in the Fire Nation because they're so very adorable and cuddly, as part of a goodwill tour between our countries. Jianzu eyed the piece of art behind him, a painting of the Northern Lights on vellum by a master water tribe artist. He grabbed its wide frame out with his outstretched hands and ripped it off its moorings. Send him this as well, to butter him up. It's worth more than what he makes in a year. Heiran seemed slightly disgusted by his reliance on bribery, but that was an Earth Kingdom cultural quirk that people from the other three nations often had trouble getting used to. Which adorable and cuddly animals are we talking about? She said. Jianzu twisted his lips and sniffed. The Shirshas. And that is the end of that chapter. Shirshas. I'm going to look that up. Or the Shirshus? It's either Shirshas. No, I think Shirshus. The Shirshus. Oh, it's the smelly ones. It's the smelly ones. The ones that are blind but they can smell. Yeah, those. Yeah, that's what they're talking about. The shirt. Yeah, they're gonna sniff her out. Okay, this is a longish chapter, so maybe it might be the last chapter I read. It really depends. If not, I'll read the next chapter, which is also as long as this one. Okay. So the next chapter is called... Actually, wait, hold on. Excuse me. There we go. I just needed to drink some water. Okay. Alright, so the next chapter is called The Introduction. The Introduction. Kyoshi struggled to open the small metal box. She'd opened the visible latch, yes, but no matter how hard she gripped and twisted the container, the false bottom that concealed the true contents wouldn't budge. You can't force it, a gentle voice said. Use too much strength and it's liable to break. The goods would spill everywhere. You don't want to leave a trail behind you. You don't want to leave a trail behind, do you? Kyoshi looked up from the floor to see a tall, beautiful woman with freckles splashed across the tops of her cheeks and serpent tattoos running down her arms. Next to her was a man, stocky and strong. Hold on. I need to... the laptop. Okay. Kyoshi looked up from the floor to see a tall, beautiful woman with freckles splashed across the tops of her cheeks and serpent tattoos running down her arms. Next to her was a man, stocky and strong, his face bedecked in with red and white makeup. The streaks of crimson met each other to form a wild, animalistic pattern, but his expression underneath was warm and mirthful. The metal box suddenly grew hot, singeing Kyoshi's flesh, and she dropped it. She tried to shout and found her teeth loose and swimming in her mouth. The painted man wiped his face, and in the streaks between the colors, his features had turned into Jianzu's. Kyoshi's Sorry, I thought I heard something. Actually, I'll be right back. I just want to check something real quick. I am back. There we go. Alright, yes. The painted man wiped his face, and in the streaks between the colors, his features turned into Jianzu's. Kyoshi searched forward with rage, but couldn't close the distance. The The women found her helplessness amusing and winked at her with a green, glowing eye. Her eyeball swelled and swelled, getting so large that it burst out of its socket and kept expanding until it consumed her other eye, and then the entirety of her face, and then the four corners of the world. Kyoshi failed in terror. Kyoshi flailed in terror inside the cavernous darkness of its pupil, trying to reach solid ground. "We'll never leave you," Jianthu whispered. "You will always have us, in the distance behind you, right next to you, watching you. The two of us will always be there for you." In the height of her panic, a hand gripped Kyoshi by the shoulder. The warmth and solidness of it told her not to flinch, not to worry. She sat up slowly and blinked in the fading daylight. "Wake up," Rangi said. "We're here." Rangi insisted on making a single... Actually, hold on just one second. I just want to go back to the map. Oh yeah, so they went a long way. Okay. Rangi insisted on making a single pass over Chameleon Bay before landing. She leaned on Ping Ping's side, drawing in the layout of the ramshackle port town with the single-mindedness of a buzzard wasp, as if every trash-strewn alley and patchy roof were vitally important. Kyoshi let Rangi take her time. She needed a moment to make sure she'd fully climbed out of the depths of her nightmare. Yeah. Yeah, she needed a moment to make sure she'd fully climbed out of the depths of her nightmare. After she collected her thoughts, she joined in on looking. To Kyoshi, the massive buildings was indistinguishable. A curving scab around the bay that should have been picked off long ago. Damn. There was only one location that she was interested in, the one that matched the description in her journal. "There," she spotted. "There," she said, pointing out one of the few structures that rose above a single story. The yellow roof stood out among its green neighbors like a diseased leaf. "That should be Madame Chiji's house. Chiji's house." Should I pronounce it Kiji's house or Chiji's house? It's Kiji. So should I just say Kiji or Shiji? Kiji or Shishi? Kishi? Kishi? Okay. I can say Kishi. Well, actually, let me look this up. Kiji. Yeah, I think you're right. No, I think it's Kiji. Hold on. Kiji. Okay, so it's Kiji. Ki, but not she, it's G. Alright. Hold on, just one second. Good night. Alrighty. So, yeah, the yellow roof stood out among its green neighbors like a diseased leaf. That should be Madame Kiji's tea house. Yeah, that should be Madame Kiji's tea house. They pulled up, retracing their route back. They pulled up, retracing their route through the sky. There was no place to land Pang Pang within the town limits, and a sky bison with no airbender on it was surely one of the first signs Jianzhu would order his network to search for. The reconnaissance I don't know how to pronounce that word.
Reconnaissance.
Oh, I said it right. I just didn't feel like I said it right. Okay. The reconnaissance sweep itself had risks. The small cusp they found on the outskirts felt like a dose of luck. Perhaps their reserves of good fortune would be drained by the simple act of hiding Peng Peng in the trees. "We'll be back, girl," Kyoshi said to her, stroking the beast's nose. Huh. Now I'm wondering, because I didn't actually look it up, but I think Peng Peng might be her spirit guide, or spirit animal, or animal guide. Unless the book states otherwise, that she has something. But I feel like she and Peng Peng are gonna be, like, together now for always. And unless something happens, which, you know. Yeah. Alright. We'll be back, girl, Kyoshi said to her, stroking the beast's nose. Peng Peng gently bumped her with her skull, telling her they'd better. Kyoshi and Renki set out on foot, the pressure of firm ground against their soles a welcome sensation after so much flying. As they followed a dirt path into Port Chameleon Bay, they were treated to a ground level view of the town in all its glory. It was a miserable sight. For the past 9 years, Kyoshi had never laid eyes on open, flat land going to waste without some attempts to grow food on it. But in the dusty, hard-packed fields they'd passed through made it clear it wasn't worth trying. The ground here was rawhide, impenetrable. The port sustained life in the barest sense. they encountered a surrounding band of slums, wooden wooden lee toasts. Yeah, wooden lean toasts and moth-eaten tents. The inhabitants stared at them with glassed eyes, not bothering to adjust their bodies from where they sprawled. The few who stood up, in wariness that they might be hostile, were hunched by malnutrition and sickness. People shouldn't live. People shouldn't live like this, Rangi said. Kyoshi felt her sinews. Her sinews? Her sinews? It's not sinus. I know that for sure. Sinews? Sinew. Okay. Kyoshi felt her sinews tying in knots. They can, and they do. They can, and they do, she said as casually as she could. That's not what I mean. Rangi rubbed her elbow, considering the pros and cons of what she was about to say. I know about the time you spent in Yokia on your own, before Master Kelsang took you in, even though you tried to hide it from me. Kyoshi's stride faltered, but she gathered herself and kept going. They couldn't stop here simply because her friend wanted to have a heart-to-heart about one of the oldest, deepest scars running through her soul. Aunt Mui told me, Rangi said, Kyoshi, you should never have been put through that experience. The thought of the other villagers ignoring you when you needed them makes me sick. That's why I was always pushing you to fight back. Kyoshi laughed bitterly. She'd long laid the blame for those years on a different party than the Yokuyans. What was I supposed to do? Drop the mountain on them? Smack around a bunch of children half my size? Anything I did would have been completely disproportionate. She shook her head, wanting to change the subject. Anyway, is the Fire Nation so perfect that prosperity gets shared with every citizen? No, Rangi said, her lips scrunched to the side. But maybe one day it could be. They entered the proper town, the edges marked by a change. Yeah, they entered the town proper, the edges marked by a changed brick and clay shanties, some of them earth-bent into being and others laid by hand. The streets twisted and angled like they'd been sent over animal paths instead. Wait, let me read that again. I was not fully paying attention. The streets twisted and angled like they'd been set over animal paths instead of following human needs. If it hadn't been for the landmark of the tea house. There we go. If it hadn't been for the landmark of the tea house jutting above the roofline, Kyoshi would have been lost after a few steps. The merchants who'd closed up shop for the night had done so with vigor, coating their storefronts with so many locks and iron bars that she wondered how some of them afforded the expense. A number of deer frogs, hidden behind walls and fences, set off barking as they passed. No one bothered them, thankfully. Reaching the tea house felt like making it through a field of tripwires. Madame Kiji's was an island in the haphazard. Yeah, Madame Kiji's Madame Kiji's was an island in the haphazard layout of the town, ringed by the broadest avenue of open space they'd been so far. It was as if someone had aggressively claimed the public square and planked down the wooden building in the center. Light flickered through the paper windows. They stepped onto the large, creaking porch, approaching cautiously. There was an old man sprawled across the doorway. Yeah, they stepped onto the large, creaking porch, approaching cautiously. There was an old man sprawled across the doorway, trapped in the canvas blankets, blocking their entry. His loud snores caused his wispy white beard to flutter like cobwebs in the breeze. Sorry, I just need a lot of water today. Uh, Kyoshi was debating whether to prod him gently or try leaping over him when he woke up with a start, grumbling at the impact his shoulder made with the door frame. Oh, why am I like this? Maybe it's the thirst that's just like not making me concentrate. Hold on just 1 second. Okay, I think I'm good now. But yes, let me start over. Kyoshi was debating whether to prod him gently or try leaping over him when he woke up with a start, grumbling at the impact his shoulder made with the door frame. He blinked at her and frowned. "Who are you?" he mumbled. She noticed his hands shaking as they poked out from his cocoon. From hunger, no doubt. She hadn't given enough thought to money as she made her getaway from the mansion. But there were always a few coppers in the pocket. But there were always a few coppers in the pocket she'd sewn into her. Into her dress long ago. She fished the coins out and placed them on the porch in front of him. If the instructions in her journal were correct, she and Rangi wouldn't have any need for money once they were inside. Get yourself something to eat, grandfather, she said. The old man smiled at her. His wrinkles clawing over his face, but his happy expression turned to outright shock when Rangi added a silver piece to the pile. Kyoshi glanced back at her. "What?" Rangi said. "Weren't we just talking about this kind of thing?" The inside of Madame Kiji's was only halfway finished. The ground level was dedicated to serving food and drink. Tables for visitors were arranged over a layer of straw and sand, but where there should have been a second floor with rooms for overnight guests and weary travelers, there was no floor. Doors floated in the walls 12 feet. Yeah, doors floated in the walls 12 feet off the ground with no way to reach them. No mezzanine, no stairs. The handful of hooded figures sitting in the corners didn't seem to think that was unusual, nor did they look up at Kyoshi and Rangi, as Kyoshi and Rangi came in. If anything, they leaned farther into their cups of tea, trying to remain inconspicuous. Kyoshi and Rangi took seats in the middle. Near them was an exquisite, heavily constructed Paisho table, by far the nicest object in the room. It sat on four sturdy legs, surrounded by ratty surrounded by ratty floor cushions. Yeah, by surrounded by ratty floor cushions. A jewel nestled in the petals of a wilted flower. They were in the right place, and they were in the right chairs. It was supposed to be only a matter of time before someone came over and said the phrase she was waiting for. For Kyoshi, it was eternity. The Paisho table was an agonizing reminder of Yoon, and she didn't need a visual aid to feel the raw wound of losing Kelsang. That pain was a bleeding trail leading back to Yokuya. It would never wash away. Renki kicked her chair. The man made his way over to them. A young man, really, a boy. Each step he took into the better lit center of the room regressed how old he looked. His sleeves were bound by thin strands of leather, and he wore head straps in the style of the Si Wang tribes. They hung loose around his face and neck, framing his barely contained fury. Kyoshi could sense Rangi getting ready for the worst, gathering and storing up violence to unleash if things went wrong. Would you like a drink? What would you like to drink? The boy said through his teeth. Here it was, the moment of truth. If the instructions in the journal were wrong, then her vaulted single path forward would be cut off at the first step. Jasmine picked and fall, scented at noon and steeped at a boil. Kyoshi said. Such a combination didn't exist, or if it did, it would have tasted like liquid disaster. The reply came out of his mouth like it needed to be dragged by Komodo rhinos, but it was the reply she was looking for. We have every color blossom known to man and spirit, he said. Red and white will suffice, she replied. He clearly had been hoping for any responses but that one. Lao Jie! Lao Jie or Lao Shi? Because it's Lao, but then it's just G-E. So is it J or is it G? I want to say J. Because it sounds fancier. But maybe it's Lao G? J? It's G. That's the last. It's just J. Or Lao Jie? I'd say G. Lao G. No. Lao J. Lao J. Lao J. G. J. Lao J. Lao J. You're right, I should look it up. But I'm just like, and if it tells me the thing I don't want it to be, then I'll be sad. Shay, no. Lao Gua. No, that doesn't help me at all. Laugua. 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 I don't think I'm gonna remember that though. Man, I am sorry for people who are Asian and they're gonna, you know, feel really bad because I don't want to pronounce it that way. That's the way it's supposed to be pronounced. Laugua. Fuck it, it'll grow on me. Laugua. That's what I heard it say, gua. But let me do it again. Gua. Okay. I hope. Man. Okay. Hold on just 1 second. Go. Loud go. Okay. Oh, fuck. Gua. Laugua. Because, man, this is why I hate, like, I hate relying on other places to tell me how it's pronounced. And they either give you, like, the recording I just heard right now, it just sounded, it didn't sound clear at all. Like, it sounded like you said guh, gua. Hold on. Okay, hold on.
Wondering what a measuring word is? Watch this video before listening to this lesson.
Goo. Lagu. Go. Goo. So it sounds like just goo. Like not goo, but goo. Goo. If that makes sense. So lagu. Or lagu. Yeah. So Lao Goo. Alright. Lao Goo. Sorry if I sound like I'm saying goo, but I'm actually trying to say guh. Lao Guh. I'm just gonna say Lao Guh. Goo. Lao Guh. Lao Goo. Lao Goo. No, just like, I don't want people to think I'm saying goo, but also that's like how it's pronounced. I'm just like very inner conflict going on around here. But alright. Clearly he had been hoping for any response but that one. Lao Goo! The boy suddenly shouted towards the door. You were supposed to keep watch, you were supposed to keep watch, you useless piece of dung. The old man who'd been lying across the porch leaned halfway inside. He was suddenly much less infirm than when they'd first met. I was standing guard, but then these two lovely young women gave me enough money to buy a drink or 10, he said, with a big toothy grin. They must have slipped by me while I stepped out to the wine shop. Quite the tricksters, those two. He tilted the liquor bottle to his lips and drank deeply, his ragged sleeve falling down his arm to reveal sheaves of corded muscle under papery skin. The boy ground the heel of his hand into one of his eyes. He stormed away to the kitchen, muttering expletives at the old man the whole way. Kyoshi could sympathize. Rinky leaned on the table. Though her pose was relaxed, her eyes fluttered around the room, sizing the occupants up, including and especially Lao Gu. Lao Gu. Lao Gu. 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 Yeah, including and especially Lao Gu, who was busy finding the bottom of a second. Yeah, who was busy finding the bottom of a second bottle of drink. You know, she whispered to Kyoshi. You told me we were going to a Dao Fei hideout. You told me we were going to get access to help through Dao Fei code. Here we are. I heard you speak it, and yet I still can't believe this is happening. It's still not too late for you to get out of here and save yourself and save your honor, Kyoshi said. It's not my honor I'm worried about, Rangi hissed. Before they could get further into the matter, the boy returned with a tray of steaming cups. He placed one in front of Kyoshi, Rangi, and then himself, taking a seat across from them. He was much calmer now. It may have had less to do with the tea than with the backup that slowly filled in behind him. A huge man in his 30s, as tall as Kelsang and half again as thick, blotted out the lamplight coming from the kitchen. He had a smooth, clean-shaven face over a body that threatened to burst from expensive robes. His eyes having been chosen Let me say that again. I was like sort of paying attention. Alright. He had a smooth, clean-shaven face over a body that threatened to burst from expensive robes, his clothes having been chosen for flash over fit. Kyoshi saw Rangi's eyes dart to the man's feet instead of his scarred knuckles and protruding gut, and realized why. As big as he was, he hadn't made the floorboards creak. One of the doors suspended in the wall above the ground flew open. A young woman stepped out of the room, not caring about the drop that awaited her. She was dressed in an Earth Kingdom tunic, but with a fur skirt over her trousers. Kyoshi had seen pelts like that worn by visitors from the poles. The stronger indication of the woman's water tribe heritage was her piercing sapphire blue eyes that no amount of spider snake formula could possibly hide. She landed on the ground with her tiptoes. She landed on the ground with her toes pointed like a dancer's. Kyoshi could have sworn she'd fallen slower than normal, a feather's descent. It was the only way to explain how she made the journey from the second story to the hall without breaking stride or the bones on her foot. She stood behind the other shoulder of the boy, her wolf-like features unreadable as she assessed Kyoshi and Rangi. "I'm not afraid," Kyoshi told herself, finding her surprised that it was true. She'd tussled with the Lord of the Eastern Sea. A single street-level Dao Fei crew wasn't going to intimidate her. The boy in the desert hat tented his fingers. "You come in here, total strangers, unannounced." "Yeah. You come in here, total strangers, unannounced," he said. "I have the right," Kyoshi said. "I gave the passwords. You are obliged to provide me and my partner succor by the oaths of blood you have taken, lest you suffer the punishments of many knives." "You see, that's just it." The boy slouched back in his chair. "You're using these big old-timey words like you've got these grand ideas of how this is supposed to work. You rattle off a senior code that we haven't heard in years like you're pulling rank on us. You did it like you were reading from an instruction manual." Kyoshi swallowed involuntarily. The boy noticed and smiled. He tilted his head at Rangi. "Coupled with the fact that Gorgeous over here practically screams army brat, it makes me think the two of you are lawmen." We're not," Kyoshi said, swearing silently inside her head at how badly this was going. "We're not abiders." There were 3 men scattered around the tea house who were not part of their little confrontation. They all hastily plucked down coins and beat it out the door, eyes wide with fright. The boy placed a small, hard object on the table with a click. Kyoshi thought it was a Paisho tile at first, but he withdrew his hand to reveal an oblong stone, polished smooth by a river or a grinder. I'm pretty good at spotting undercover," the boy said. "And I think this is your story. Your daddy bought you an officer's commission from a crooked governor, and the first thing you decided to do with it is play detective and come knocking on our door." He thumbed at Rangi. "She was assigned to watch your back, but she didn't do a very good job, because you're here now and you're going to die." The cause will be recorded as acute terminal stupidity. Kyoshi could almost hear Rangi's thought process, counting the limbs of the three people across from them, calculating the sequence of damage she'd inflict. I'm telling you, we're not lawmen. The boy angrily kneed the underside of the table hard, knocking over the teacups and spilling the liquid across the surface. Kyoshi acted before she thought, but in retrospect, it was more about stopping Rangi than anything else. She kicked upward as well. The entire foundation of the tea house, the patch of earth it was built on, jumped by half an inch. The boy nearly fell out of his chair. His two bodyguards wobbled. The shocked looks on their faces said that didn't happen very often. Not with the large man's stability and the Water Tribe girl's impeccable balance. My girl! Oh yeah. Our girl. Kyoshi spoke over the groans of resettling wood and the dust drifting in clouds around them. You're right, she said. I don't belong here. They didn't bum rush her immediately, deciding that she needed to be attacked with caution. That bought her time to speak. The truth is that I despise Dao Fei, Kyoshi said. I hate your kind. It makes me sick to be in your presence. You're worse than animals. Kyoshi? Rangi said as the big guy and the women sidled into better flanking positions. Not sure where you're going with this. The boy remained where he was. Kyoshi could tell he wanted to put up a brave front. So did she. But that doesn't matter right now, Kyoshi said, staring through the hardened layer of rage in his eyes. You are going to give me everything I demand, because you are bound by your outlaw code. You will do as I say because of your idiotic, clownish, make-believe traditions. Her blood sang in her ears. Her hand went to her belt. The man and women would certainly interpret that as a signal to attack. She was aware of Rangi leaving her seat. Only by moving faster did Kyoshi prevent complete disaster. She slammed one of the war fans on the table, its ribs spread wide to reveal the golden leaf. The waterbender and the big guy stopped in their tracks. The boy looked like someone had reached into his chest and seized his heart. Spirits above, Lao Gu said. That's Jess's fan! The sudden appearance of the old man at the table startled them both equally. He'd managed to squeeze in between Rangi and Kyoshi without them noticing, and he leaned inward, giddily examining the details of the weapon. The boy leaped out of his seat. Where did you get that? He shouted. I inherited it, Kyoshi said, her pulse racing. From my parents. The Water Tribe girl looked at her with wonder. You're Jessa's daughter? She said. Jessa and Hark were your mother and father? Kyoshi didn't know why she was getting more worked up over simple facts than the prospect of a brawl earlier. That's right, she said. It felt like her mouth had become her stomach, unwieldy and sour. My parents founded this group. They're your bosses. Our baby has come home! Lagu crowd. This calls for a drink. He stepped back so he could have room to pour a third bottle into his gullet. Oh man, things got so interesting. So technically now she is the leader of the Dao Fei. If her parents founded the Dao Fei. That's some hardcore shit. But she also hates them. She hates them for a reason. And I'm pretty sure we're going to find out what the reason is. Yeah, he stepped back so he could have room to pour a third drink into his gullet. The boy was still angry, but in a different flavor now. We need to confer for a minute. He snatched up his rock from the table and pointed accusingly at Kyoshi. In the meantime, I suggest you get your story straight because you have a lot of explaining to do. Yes, Rangi said. She does. Lao Gu perched on the table. Lao Gu perched on a table off to the side with his containers of booze, like a strange bird arranging shiny objects in its nest. The rest of the gang filed back to the kitchen without him. Given that they seemed to treat him like background furniture, Kyoshi could have done the same. She turned to Rangi and found the firebender giving her a critical stare. What? Kyoshi said. This actually happened the way I thought it would. We're in. This is the first step to gain access to this world. Rangi remained unmoved. I told you everything before we landed, Kyoshi said. The truth about my parents being Dao Fei smugglers who abandoned me in Yokuya. Rangi, you came in here with me knowing this. The words poured out of her like a churning waterfall. Her knee was jogging rapidly up and down. The motion did not escape Rangi's notice. As bizarre as it is for me to say this, your family's secret history is not the issue, Rangi said. Don't you think you played that situation a little aggressively? That was news to Kyoshi, coming from her. That was news to her, Kyoshi, coming from her burn it first and ask questions later friend. It's the kind of behavior these people respect. It's the kind of behavior these people respect, she said. Tagaka knew we were calm and rational, and look what she tried to do to us. Rangi's teeth clicked. You didn't see yourself back there. It was like you were begging them to attack you. There's being brave, and then there's having a death wish. She reached out and clamped her hand on Kyoshi's leg to still the shaking. We are not in our element, Rangi said. You might have the keys to certain doors, but this is not our house. You have to be more careful. And if I back down from a few Dao Fei, I have no chance of standing up to Jianzu. I'm sorry, alright? Kyoshi said. This argument wasn't going to resolve anytime soon, and the gang wasn't coming back. The last thing they needed was to show a fractured front to the criminals they were trying to coerce. Rangi let it go, seeing the same value in unity. The Si Wong boy water tribe woman and bulky man arranged themselves in front of Kyoshi with great formality. Yeah, the Sea Wong boy, the water tribe woman, and bulky man arranged themselves in front of Kyoshi with great formality. She had often stood that she had often stood that way to greet important guests, always in the back of the group, due to her height. Due to her height. Due to her height. The man made a gesture with one open palm down. Yeah, the man made a gesture with one palm. The man made a gesture with one open palm down, and the other hand clenched to a fist on the top. It was unlike any other greeting Kyoshi had witnessed, and made it seem like his right side was smashing the left for trying to steal food on the table. Flitting Sparrow Keat Wong, he said, bowing slightly. If he seemed embarrassed by having such a delicate-sounding nickname, he didn't show it. The lithe waterbender stepped forward and made the same pose, though in a slouchy way to let everyone know she thought the concept of professional names silly. Karima, she said. Just Karima. Bullet Lick, the boy snapped with great pride. He had rearranged his head wraps behind his ears to a more dignified indoor style. Though some call me Skull Crusher Lek or Lek of the Whistling Death. Kyoshi made sure not to mirror the faces that Wong and Karima made behind Lek's back, or the boy would have certainly been insulted. Kyoshi, she said. This is my associate Rangi. Rangi made a little snort of disapproval that Kyoshi took to mean, so we're giving them our real names now. How did you come to us tonight? Karima asked. Start as back as you can. That far, huh? I don't remember much from when I was little, Kyoshi said, though her legs had settled down. The front of her neck now ached with tension. Only that my parents and I never stayed in one place very long, and they never told me where. You could say I grew up in the Earth Kingdom. Hold on, let me just get some more chapstick. You could say I grew up in the Earth Kingdom. That would have been before any of you joined. Lao Gu said to the others. Jessa and Hark slowed down considerably for several years and barely ran any jobs. They never told me why they stopped gathering the old crew for so long. I thought maybe they'd quit the game. The old man's memory helped Kyoshi fit pieces together into a complete puzzle. The result was uglier than she had imagined. Well, they must have wanted back. In very badly, because they abandoned me in a farming village when I was 5 or 6, she said. I can't be sure exactly when. I never saw them after that, or forgave them. That can't be, Lek said. Jessa and Hark would never do that to family. They were the most loyal bosses anyone could ask for. You must be mistaken. Kyoshi wondered Kyoshi wondered what it would be like to pick him up, like she did to that pirate, and shake him until he saw spots. Karima intervened before she could explore the idea. Are you telling their own daughter what happened to her? The waterbender snapped at Lek. Shut up and let her finish. There's not much more to tell, Kyoshi said. I nearly died of neglect in that village before I was taken in by a household of a rich and powerful man, a sage. The only possessions I had to my name were my mother's gear and her journal, which had information about my parents' Dao Fei customs, obligations I could call on. It was an instruction manual, like you said. She glanced at Rengi. I kept my parents' past a secret from the village the whole time. Given how I was treated as an outsider, I don't think I would have fared well if the townsfolk knew I was also the spawn of criminals. Kyoshi clenched her jaw. Not Kyoshi. Rengi clenched her jaw. Kyoshi could tell she was thinking about the what-ifs, how the relationship might have been different had she known Kyoshi was a tainted child from the start. Would she have looked past that and befriended Kyoshi all the same? Or would she have condemned her to the rubbish heap like she'd done to Alma and Jay and the others? And one day you just decided to leave and come here? Lex said. He was still incredulous, like a sequence of events that started with Kyoshi's parents being anything but perfect was not possible. I did not just decide. Kyoshi snarled, turning her attention back on him. The man whose house I lived in, when he murdered 2 people dear to me, I swore by the spirits that turned this world on its axis that I would make him pay for it. That's why I'm here, she said, pounding her fist on the table for emphasis. He's too powerful and influential to be brought down by the law, so I need the opposite side of the coin. I need my parents' resources. If they can give me one gift at all in this life, then let it be revenge for those I've lost. Her face was red. Kyoshi felt ready to explode. She didn't know what she'd do if another door in the wall opened or her mother and father stepped out. It would have been as volatile and uncharted as her encounter with the cave spirit. Lex solemnly took his head wraps off and wrung them between his hands. His hair was sandy and cropped underneath. You came all this way to find Jessa and Hark. He said in a mournful mutter. Kyoshi, I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to break this to you, but... Relief came like a monsoon. She did not have to meet them. She didn't have to discover what kind of person she was when the past unearthed itself. She didn't have to discover what kind of person she was when the past unearthed itself and took solid form. What, are they dead or something? Kyoshi said, waving her hand at him flippantly. I don't care. A lie. Had they appeared in front of her, she might have had to run screaming from this room. Lex's grief was replaced by outrage. A funeral guest who'd caught her stealing the altar offerings. We're talking about your mother and father. They were taken by a fever 3 years ago. She found it so easy to be cruel now that she knew for certain they couldn't defend themselves. Wow, Kyoshi said. I guess they're There are some things you can't outrun, huh? His eyes goggled out of his head. How can you be so vile? No one in the Four Nation disrespects their own kin like that. They left me behind because I took up too much cargo space, Kyoshi said. So I would say it's a family tradition. She snapped the wharf closed, intending to punctuate her sentence in an intimidating way. Instead, the arms fell out of alignment and the leaf folded the wrong way, ruining the effect. She would need to learn how to use it properly at some point. I'm not here to confront my parents or their ghosts, Kyoshi said. A raw, nervous energy coursing through her bones had slowed. I'm here to seek what's owed me by blood ties. She counted off on her fingers. I want access to safe houses in the bigger cities where I can stay hidden at length. I want introductions with the rest of the network, starting with the strongest benders. And most of all, I want training. Training until I'm strong enough to take down my enemy personally. Silence fell over the group. Karima made an awkward little choke. Kyoshi thought maybe she'd gotten some saliva down the wrong pipe. But then the waterbender burst out laughing. Other cities? She guffawed. Let me guess. Your journal mentioned secret bases in Bossing Say, Omashu, Gowling, maybe, filled with a brotherhood of bandits who honor the old ways? I'll blow my trumpet, Wong said. I'm sure they'll come running. Kyoshi frowned. What's so funny? Karima spread her arm. This is our one and only base of operations. This is the network. Us. Whatever assistance you thought you could personally demand outside the law ends here, within these walls. Kyoshi remembered the most tired she'd ever been in her life. It was not long after she'd been dropped in Yokoya, when she still saw the journal and chest as her birthright treasures, and not as incriminating evidence her parents wanted to ditch alongside her. She'd been chased away from every door, forced to drag the heavy trunk with her. It was a lot for a child to carry back then, even one as outsized as her. As the day wore on, the exhaustion had swept. As the day wore on, the exhaustion had swept into her fingernails and teeth. Her thoughts had turned gray. Hold on just a second. Let me just adjust myself again. She'd been chased away from every door, forced to drag the heavy trunk with her. It was a lot for a child to carry back then, even one as outsized as her. As the day wore on, the exhaustion had swept into her fingernails and teeth. Her thoughts had turned gray. There had been no room in her body for hunger and thirst. It was all given over to fatigue. Kyoshi felt the same fragments of weariness threatening to undo her now. They drove into her joints like nails, beckoning her to give up. Looking at the Dao Fei before her, she saw it clearly now. They weren't the vanguard of some shadow army. Yeah, looking at the Delphi before her, she saw it clearly now. They weren't the vanguard of some shadow army she could use up upon Jianzhu. They were haggard, hunted people, like her. We've fallen on hard times, Wong said. She gathered he didn't speak much, so when he did, it was likely true and to the point. Crackdowns on smuggling across the Earth Kingdom have been pretty severe in recent years. We've been cut off from gangs in other cities, without much news or any jobs to speak of. Your journal must be at least a decade old, with entries that go back further, Lex said. In those days, groups like ours had real influence. He stared at his hands like a deposed king longing for the grip of a scepter. We had territory. The governors asked us for permission to do business. Lek, you would have been 3 years old during our heyday, Karima said. We hadn't even picked you up yet. He wheeled on her furiously. That means the rest of you should be more upset than me. We understand, Rengi interrupted. It's painful to know what should have been. Kyoshi detected a streak of satisfaction in her voice at the way things had turned out. The hole went no deeper than a dilapidated tea house and a few cut purses. As far as Rangi was concerned, they could still extricate themselves. Kyoshi, we tried, she said. You did what you could, but this isn't what we came for. She glanced at the room doors and their unusual placement. We could stay here overnight, perhaps, but it'd be no safer than camping. We should get back to Peng Peng and fly to the nearest. Lake slammed his hands on the table. Fly? His voice broke with excitement. You flew here? Yeah, Lek slammed his hands on the table. Fly? Fly? His voice broke out with excitement. You flew here? The rest of the group perked up. Are you telling me you have a sky bison? Karima said. There was an interested gleam in her eye. Rangi cursed at her slip-up. Why? Kyoshi said. What difference would it make? Because now you have something we want, Karima said, while Lek bounced off the walls. Being Jessa and Hark's kid means we're obliged to keep you safe from harm. That doesn't mean we'll follow your orders or help you on some personal quest for vengeance. You want that level of commitment. Then you make us an offer. No, Rangi snapped. Forget it. We're not giving you our bison. We're not giving you anything of the sort. Simmer down, Top Knot, Karima said. I'm merely suggesting a partnership. We need to get out of this dried up town where the prospects are better. Yeah, we need. Oh, let me say that again. I'm merely suggesting a partnership. We need to get out of this dried up town to where the prospects are better. Kyoshi wants training. We should travel together for a while. It's her best shot at finding earthbending teachers of ill repute. Hearing her, Kyoshi suddenly realized she'd made a critical mistake. She'd shown her earthbending. Well, she greatly needed improvement in her native element. There wasn't a straightforward way to get training in the others without revealing she was the Avatar. Ranky was still opposed to the idea. We didn't come here to revive a 2-bit smuggling operation. Let me say that again. We didn't come here to revive a 2-bit smuggling operation, she said to Kyoshi. We'd just be taking on more risk than we need. First of all, our operation was top-notch, Lex said, full of umbrage. And second, you two are the baggage here. You wouldn't last a day moving in our circles without a guide. For crying out loud, we almost killed you. Rengi narrowed her eyes. Is that your impression of what happened? She sounded perfectly willing to test his theory. Kyoshi buried her face in her hands while they argued. Ideas that had been so clear in her mind before were becoming trampled and muddy. Her singular path turned out to be full of brambles and false turns. Laogu interrupted her wallowing by slamming an empty bottle on the table. He'd been forgotten until now, and his smile folded in on itself like he was bursting with the world's best secret. I know it's a tough decision, my dear girl, he said, cocking his ear toward the door. But don't take too long. The police are coming. And that is the end of that chapter. I don't think I'm going to be reading anymore. So, next time, I will read to you next time. Oh, shit, there's like a... Nice. But yes, I will read to you next time. Thank you so much for listening. And, goodbye.